This starts up okay, we're good. All right, so I guess it's about 2:15 now on the nose. I apologize if this is in our face. I'm going to try to get it out of my face anyhow. I'm short, everything's in my face. We've established that. Anyhow, welcome to Hydra and Anthropology of Science Fiction. I'm Daryl Fuzzetti. I teach over at Western Nevada College in Carson City, Nevada. Actually, this is a course I developed back in 2013, and it's run several times. It'll run this fall again at the college. I know this is kind of far away for everybody, but, I mentioned it only, because it's a valid course, and over the time that we run it, we get a lot more time to explore, the anthropological themes in science fiction, and science fiction is modern mythology and the role of mythology in culture, than we do in an hour, a very short hour at a comic convention like this. Some conventions even limit you to 45 minutes, so it gets a little challenging, so hopefully we'll do the topic some justice today. Out of curiosity, what brings everyone? I know what brings him here. That's okay. It happens. I don't have a syllabus to hand out that says no cell phones, so you can't get in trouble. What brings everybody to this talk? I know what brought you here.
Yeah, I just saw like the anthropology of science fiction. They're like the history of when science fiction started or something.
Oh, we have a slide for you in this. You just hold on to that thought for a minute. You're going to like that slide that I pull up. It's one of my favorites. Anybody else? Just an interest,
Yeah,
curiosity?
I like science fiction, and I'm a graduate student for library science. So
Oh, nice.
any
Okay.
kind of history research stuff is
Oh, okay. Well, good. Hopefully we have something for everybody here. I know the archaeologists are here. Do you know they've done an archaeology of Star Trek book as well? It was only done, did you see it?
No, I've heard of it, though. I haven't had
Germany. And I will tell you, I got a copy through interlibrary loan one day. And then I got in lots of trouble with the department because you couldn't buy this book. No matter who I emailed, you could not buy this book. Do you know what I did? Oh, I spent lots of department money. Do you know I have a full Xerox copy of that book at home? If you ever need a copy, please call me.
I've got your email.
Now you got my email. Now I'm sure it can be reproduced again. Okay? Anyhow, now that we've got that out of the way, our illegalities of many sorts, anthropology of science fiction really is about looking at science fiction. And to me, good science fiction or valid science fiction explores what it means to be human. It looks at the human condition. Sometimes that means looking at it through alien eyes. The alien represents whatever problem or trait we're looking at in the human. Also, in terms of good science fiction tells stories. You have dystopic and utopic science fiction. You have these both give you outcomes of the path you may be on. It looks at current issues in time. And by the way, you just blew yourselves up. There's the dystopic side of it. You keep following this path, here's where you went. Goodbye, humans. Have a nice day. See the error of your ways while you still can, right? Or, here's another path. The Star Trek is your classic utopic vision of the future. We don't know exactly how we got to that future watching Star Trek, but we know we did. And it's a beautiful future. Everything's been solved, right? You got a post-scarcity society that's been created within the Federation, and it's all about self-improvement, right? So there's a lot we could talk about along those lines as well. That would be a talk called Anthropology of Star Trek as well. There's a whole class for that. Isaac Asimov, one of the obvious brilliant minds, staple in science fiction. Beautiful quote that I put up here because I think it really sums up science fiction and humanity. Individual science fiction stories may seem as trivial as ever to the blinder critics and philosophers of today, but the core of science fiction, its essence, the concept about which resolves, has become crucial to our salvation if we are to be saved at all. To me, that solidifies science fiction as contemporary myth. And people look at myth in culture for what reason? Or reasons, I should say. What role does myth serve in our culture? Or any culture? I won't pick on the archaeologists too much.
Provides reasons why, the answers to the
Yeah.
reasons why things
It's a
happen.
narrative that we can look at and learn lessons from, right? We can learn just as many lessons using science fiction or comics as we can by picking up a Bible, and maybe even more through science fiction. By using this to look at ourselves through an alien lens, other worlds, looking at our situations and our personality traits being put on the stage in a futuristic setting, it's not like turning on the evening news or sitting through maybe a dry anthropology class talking about the Bushmen, or, contemporary religions talking about even a simple topic like the linguistic and cultural relations, the history of peoples in the Middle East. That can be a real fireball if you've ever tried to introduce that in a class. Even the topic of homosexuality turns out to be a real fireball. Political issues. Through science fiction, we can safely talk about all these things in a very philosophical way, and people get it. So this acting as contemporary myth and looking at that mythology to show us, some of the possible outcomes to some of the paths we take as humans is beautiful, and it's timeless. I could pull up, how many books could I look at right now? Fahrenheit 451. Still very relevant today. And I thought of it immediately when I saw the news a few weeks ago that Washoe County, the Reno area, was wrestling over book bans again. Book bans. And even looking at the deconstruction of our own education system here in the United States ever since at least Vietnam, the Vietnam era where you had every social uprising you could possibly have, we had a lot of educated people, a lot of informed people. What happened to the education system? So much of classic science fiction is still very relevant today. We could pull up, I watched Forbidden Planet the other night. I know, it's still just as powerful, holds just as much water now today as it ever did. Why? Because we still need the stories. And there's new generations coming along that need those stories. And we're a very cyclic type of species. We haven't solved our problems yet. We seem to keep falling back into patterns and pitfalls. So where will all that lead us? I don't know. I'm putting my money on human extinction, actually, at the hands of the humans at some point in time, perhaps. Be sad if I'm around to see it happen, but at the same time I could see myself saying, I told you so. It's in this story right here. So some of the main themes I look at when I talk about this, defining anthropology and science fiction for people that are maybe not so familiar with anthropology, but also looking at the types of science fiction we have, the social, cultural significance of it, and myth and metaphor. Of course, we know Ray Bradbury's work, we know Star Trek, and hopefully all of you, or most of you, have read some Ursula Le Guin in your time. Okay, this is a great video. Unfortunately, I don't have internet access here. But if you go to YouTube and you type in the value of science fiction, you will listen to anywhere from a 4-minute to I use a 4-minute version in here, up to a 30-minute or more version of some of the classic science fiction writers. Even Robert Heinlein back in the day when he was a good old hippie boy. Oh, you could hear, and he's smoking and drinking while he's doing the interview. It's a great interview with Robert Heinlein, talking about the human condition and the human issues of the day and how he uses science fiction. So I wish I had internet access here. I do not, and I apologize for that. But do go to YouTube and check out some of these videos that are up there on this. Okay. How many of you have some anthropology in your background? Maybe have taken a class or two. How many know the name Franz Boas? Oh, the two in the back over here to my right best know that name. Oh, he smiles when I say Franz Boas. Anytime that name comes up in a class, we always pause for a moment of silence. Some of you who are very familiar with him know why I say this. Basically, he created our field, and he did a lot of work in biological anthropology, henceforth creating my main field, which is biological anthropology. Anyhow, this was a quote from Franz Boas, 1928. Anthropology and Modern Life, page 11, if you ever go look it up. To me, he defined not just anthropology, he defined science fiction. So we'll read it very quickly and briefly. Anthropology replaced science fiction, replace anthropology with science fiction, all right? I could overlay it here. Science fiction, rather than anthropology, is often considered a collection of curious facts telling about the peculiar appearance of exotic people and describing their strange customs and beliefs. It's looked upon as an entertaining diversion, apparently without any bearing upon the conduct of life of civilized communities. This opinion is mistaken. More than that, I hope to demonstrate that a clear understanding of the principles of anthropology/science fiction illuminates the social prowess of our own times and may show us, if we're ready to listen to its teachings, what to do and what to avoid. Again, Franz Boas, a man clearly ahead of his time. And, of course, I'm a big fan of Franz Boas. So. Those of you who are unfamiliar with him, go look him up. He's spectacular. Anyhow, types of science fiction. No, this is better than the time I got fixated on the history of maize. So trust me, this is a step up in the world for me. Types of science fiction, we've got hard science fiction. The term hard science fiction was first used in print in 1957 by Julia Miller in a review of Islands in Space in Astounding Science Fiction. This was a story that focused on science and technology, and since the term was introduced, hard science fiction refers to technologically focused science fiction, as opposed to soft or social science fiction, which was actually a term introduced by Ursula Le Guin in the 1970s, referring to looking at social issues in science fiction. And of course, her father was the famous Alfred Kroeber, anthropologist. Okay? And so it's no surprise that she grew up writing the kind of stories that she was writing. So hard and soft reflect really natural and social sciences, respectively. We've got apocalyptic themes, which really, in my opinion, reflect both hard and soft science fiction. And again, utopia and dystopia, looking at more positive outcomes for humanity versus the more negative outcomes for humanity in the dystopic stories that you'll see. Okay? Depending on your perspective, some prefer one over the other. I like to really read a lot of dystopic science fiction personally. I think it speaks more to me in terms of, wow, that's a powerful message, and look where you got yourselves in all this. So to me, sometimes the dystopic is a little more powerful. Social science fiction, again, a term coined by Ursula Le Guin, and really, this is how I was defining science fiction myself. These come from my own thoughts. Science fiction allows us to study the human condition across space and time, and to see our humanity in the pot shards and splinters of bone. I mean, aside from science fiction to me does exactly what anthropology is, and particularly what archaeology does. You're taking a deeper look at the human past, the human present, and even sometimes looking at the human future through very little evidence whatsoever, and you're making interpretations. So science fiction to me really represents exploration of the entire sense of being human. Science fiction hypothesis. If you do not own this book, you need to go get this book. You want drama, intrigue, crime, corruption, this book is timeless. Judith Merrill created something called the science fiction hypothesis. And this is a direct quote from one of her introductions to her books. Science fiction is an experiment with each author observing the world, developing hypotheses about it, and setting up experiments in the form of these stories. And that's exactly what we're doing. They're setting up experiments for outcomes to be either positive or not so positive to make a point about humanity. Judith Merrill, her pen name was Cyril Judd because she couldn't get published otherwise, and she couldn't get published as a woman, which many women could not back in the day. They weren't even accepted into the Hugo Awards until the 1970s. she's considered to be the little mother of science fiction, and her book Outpost Mars 1952 is fantastic. It's a world-building type book, okay? This colony goes out there to trying to build a self-sufficient community in a new and strange world. So they've left Earth, they're making this new community, creating a new culture, learning to survive under these new conditions. They set up a trade exchange with Earth so that it can help them survive in this new planet, okay, so they can set everything up. You've got everything going on. You've got corrupt drug companies, okay, you've got illegal drugs, all right, you've got a mafia-type criminal organization going on in the book as well. There's a lot of sub-stories in here. You know, corrupt political system, criminals basically running everything on Earth, especially in the drug companies. And they also take a good look in this book about the medical aspects of sustainability and maintaining relations when you're really dealing with organized crime and a drug world back on Earth. How do you set up this new world separate from that Earth when you still rely on them in this highly corrupt system? So it's a real fun book, I think. If you haven't read it, it's a good time to take a look at it. And a lot of the corruption in these systems are things we see every day. We still see these problems here. So it's a fun read. Technology tidbits, I like to bring this up. I'm looking at some of the origins of things that came up in science fiction. And to me, this represents people who have been reading science fiction for years, perhaps being influenced to create some of these products that we take for granted today. Even some of the science fiction that comes out and we think that it's a brand new thing, it may not be. 1867, Jules Verne, in From Earth to the Moon, introduces the retro rocket. And this goes back to 1867. 1899 was the earliest reference I could find to the DVD or the VCR. And it appears in Wells When the Sleeper Wakes. And I don't know how familiar everybody is with the literature, but some of these books are great to go back and read if you read science fiction at all. 1909, a video communicator by E.M. Forster, and the machine stops by. Everybody always credits Star Trek with the first, video communications. Well, even Star Trek has its roots in early science fiction, and, Gene Roddenberry read science fiction, right? He was highly influenced by Forbidden Planet. And if you've seen Forbidden Planet, you can see Star Trek in Forbidden Planet. There's no question about it. But some of these things that are introduced into science fiction stories are things we look at today like, oh, they probably came from Star Trek. Well, no, somebody thought of this stuff before Star Trek. And people have been using this information to create their stories, their shows, their films. And lo and behold, they've influenced people to create these technologies by going into these fields. 1920 is the first time we hear the term robot. That is the actual origin of the term robot. It was Karel Capek in the book R.U.R. Robbie the Robot was not the first robot, which you see that cited an awful lot if you go looking around as the first robot, but this goes way back to 1920. 1936, again with Wells, who was a futurist as well as a science fiction writer. 1936, the giant flat panel display, which you now have in your living room, or bedroom, or both. And there it is from 1936. 1951, the Telebook, which was words on a screen. That's Asimov and the fun they had. So there's your first word processor. But these guys were creating science and technology for their stories. And, what did they have for science or technology in this time period, in these time periods that they're writing? I mean, this is phenomenal research, phenomenal imagination, phenomenal work to make this stuff usable and believable, and probably go on to influence many people in science fiction and in the real world to create these things, because we have these things now. 1965 voicemail, Frederick Pohl, The Age of the Pussyfoot. And in 1970, the light sword. Not the lightsaber from George Lucas, which the children all think, oh, Star Wars create lightsabers. Well, you need to go read some Ring World and we'll have a new discussion on that lightsaber. But, you know, who knows? He probably read the books as a kid. I mean, Niven was a very popular writer. Still, people like to read his work. So, you know, it could have been that that's where the idea for the lightsaber came from. 1992, CIC, Virtual Earth, which is your Google Earth, really, to me, appears in Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash. So I like to put this slide in. It occurred to me that talking about this stuff, I really want to show how influential science fiction has been. And I think by looking at a history of some of the technology that appears, some of the science that had to be created for these people, they had to create worlds. They had to create languages. They had to create rules for their cultures, rules for society. You know, they had to set up everything that goes with that, including the science. And they had to make the science work. They had to make it believable in their stories. So I like to, take pause and note where some of this stuff came from. And, kids that grew up reading this stuff back in the day, who knows if any of the people that created some of these things thought about it from science fiction. I've heard from many people that have been Star Trek fans, and in my course of doing research on Star Trek fandom culture, so many people say how much Star Trek influenced their careers in some way. I did a panel a couple of weeks ago with a lot of NASA scientists back in Reno at a Be the Astronaut event for our space museum up there. And so many people cited some of these works. Carl Sagan, Star Trek. But even Carl Sagan was reading science fiction. And where was he influenced? So I think it's just really neat to take stock of how powerful this stuff has been over the years and the kinds of people it's had an impact on. Looking at some of the socio-cultural influences of science fiction, if you have not read the Darkover series, have you? Ha! I finally found someone at a convention that has read the Darkover series.
I haven't read the entire series, but I've definitely read.
Anybody else? Everybody should be writing this down and buying these books. Am I right? Huh? He's taking the pictures. These are all also on my website. So if you come by my table, I'll give you a card. My academic website has all these slides up there. I did the best I could to also post these to the HydraCon site and reference them. But if you want all the notes, I got them for you on the website. Marion Zimmer Bradley, these stories from the 1970s to the present are fantastic tales. Look how happy she is. Obviously, very satisfied customer. Earth, okay, Earth-based humans are on their way to colonize, to a new colony. They crash on Darkover, and Darkover is the most exciting, bizarre planet you've ever been to in your life. See, I do not lie. Oh, they're stranded. They're isolated from Earth forever. Your classic, oh my gosh, we're off course, we're crash-landed on a planet. Okay, it sounds like your typical science fiction story. What are we going to learn from it? Well, you've got all these ethnicities from Earth that are stuck together now on this planet that have to figure out how to get along without killing each other. Not only that, they seem to have run into the indigenous peoples. And so you know how those conflicts go. Well, now we've got our own ethnicities we're going to kill each other over. We've got the indigenous populations. How do we get the resources we need? What do we do with these people? And how do we figure out how to get along? These stories are phenomenal. And has anything changed since she started writing these stories, by the way? Look at that. Science fiction narrative is contemporary myth. Humans, we really should flood the market and turn everybody's TV sets and only have to science fiction and only Sci-Fi Channel only. That'll be the only broadcast station. And then let's see what else will I do when I take over. All the science fiction, and these will become required readings in schools. And then perhaps we can actually impact humanity. There's a goal. I know, see, there's some people that are ready to take over with me, huh? This is how we did. But this is a really good way to do it. I've had some of the best students tell me that their parents raised them on Star Trek, or they're avid science fiction readers. I mean, some of my best students that have ever come through in the 13 years I've been teaching out west, 2 years prior to that in Illinois, some of these people are just amazing with their thought influenced by this stuff. So here we are with a story that obviously still speaks to us, stories that obviously still speak to us today. All right? Now you got your psychic lineages here, okay? And the people that are psychic are your redheads, okay? Oh, yeah, oh, the redheads are very happy now. That's awesome. And they dominate the social order. So now we have a person in the back of the room who's excited that she's part of the hierarchy that's on top. All right, because she has these psychic abilities. Well, if I was a psychic, yeah, of course I'd be running the planet too, right? Because I know what everybody else is thinking. All right, and the women are fighting to achieve higher social status, and they don't want to just be breeding machines. Is this a theme that sounds familiar to anybody still today? Okay. Oh, that's a talk tomorrow for Wonder Woman. All right, anyhow. Overall, this is really a bunch of stories that really look at the human place in society and really do reflect contemporary issues that not only go back to the 70s but are still with us today. Just that alone speaks volumes about the human condition and the patterns and the cycles we continue to hold ourselves in. Okay? So that's really what it also takes a good look at outcasts and how outcasts are treated in this world, as well as the impact of environmental change on culture, which I find a very lovely sidebar to these stories, because environmental change has a huge impact on culture. Cultural change has just as huge an impact on the environment. It really is. Biological change, environmental change, culture change are all intertwined, and it shines through very nicely in these books and continues to be quite relevant today, something you can certainly use in class and pull a lot of lessons from. Continuing with our socio-cultural influences, we've got the Isher stories. Anybody ever read Isher? No? Oh, wow, these are great stories. A.E. Van Vogt, The Weapon Shops of Isher. If you have not read this, and the other books that go with it, they're fantastic. Really, a two-class society ruled by this house of Isher. Very corrupt royal family. Decadent lifestyle they're leading. What a lovely corrupt royal family running the world. All right. The family of this empress has ruled for centuries. And she wants to bring about her own change, and she's looking at the government and saying, well, it's limited by these weapon shops that we have on the planet. So what's the deal with the weapon shops? Oh, well, they only sell to honest citizens, you know. We'll start with that. The guns are only sold to the honest citizens. The guns are integrated force fields that are proof against, you know, you have a force field that protects you basically if you own one of these weapons. All right, so say the government has weapons, the police force has weapons, other criminals have weapons, but if you buy one of these weapons from this shop, you're immune to the effects of the other weapons. And it's driving the royal family up the wall. Okay? But yeah, as a citizen, if you got one of these weapons, and you prove to them you're one of the honest citizens of society, these stories get to be very exciting. Okay? You get to buy one of these weapons. Okay? The weapon shop has a neutral stance. They have a policy of non-aggression, so they can't directly overthrow the government, but they will make you weapons that protect you against the government and any other forces that the government controls. Perhaps the honest citizens will be the ones that overthrow the government and bring about the social change we really need. Great stories. And again, I mean, I'm sure we could talk about this at great length and show how that's still very current in today's society. I'd love a weapon shop like that. Where do we go set one up? Oh, see, we're thinking already here. Who knows how many evil seeds I have planted in the world today. But, I mean, yeah, we'll just go out and build who's going to build a weapon shop? Who's handy? Who's got some technological know-how here? Okay, I'll recruit some people. Other things we've got, Left Hand of Darkness, Ursula Le Guin. People on Get Them change sexes every month. The interesting thing about this is not so much that the inhabitants are changing sex every month, which I find fantastic in itself. And if you've ever read, people have read this, yes? No? Oh my goodness. All right, good book to read, Left Hand of Darkness. The interesting thing, and anybody with an ounce of anthropological background in even a class, will tell you how significant it is that this is told from what we call an emic perspective. the inhabitants' perspective, the inhabitants are telling this story. Okay, and I think it's a wonderful way to get a message across and use your characters in the book in a different way. It really looks at how our culture shapes our gender and how individual worldviews are even shaped by gender. And you get to see it all from an insider perspective as the inhabitants continue to change sexes every month. This is a fantastic story that really should be out there for people because it does speak to the difference between sex and gender. And, sex is male or female, biologically based. And people ask you, did you have a boy or a girl? We still have the pink and the blue and the whole 9 yards. It goes against the cultural norms. So we still haven't made that complete leap yet. There's still people that freak out. It still happens. Should the girl be playing with trucks? How far, have women's rights produced? Because I don't think our society really accepts the issue that gender is fluid, gender identity is fluid. The LGBT folks still have a very hard time because it's something in society. We can't understand that concept, or we don't want to understand that concept, or there are forces working against understanding that concept or being accepting of these concepts, or about changing any of our cultural norms in terms of separate from the gender issue altogether. Time Machine, Wells, 1895. You got your two groups. The Morlocks, I really like how they deal with the Morlocks in this book in terms of looking at the yes, no, yes. I see some yeses, I see some confused looks. I mean, this really predicted so much about the politics and the technology of the 20th century and everything that unfolded. The Morlocks are basically your ghetto dwellers. Bottom of the barrel, right? Oh my goodness, you guys haven't read The Time Machine?
Read it no time ago.
Long time ago. Anybody ever see, there was a Big Bang Theory episode where they had, where the Morlocks came and they came to eat Sheldon in his sleep? Yeah, okay, that's the Morlocks. And the way he wrote this was really so divisive, so in your face, a two-class type of society to show you what was going on in the world. And to me, it's still very much relevant to today, especially coming from someone like him who was a futurist. I mean, the stuff that he predicted about how our politics and our technology would unfold in the 20th century has been amazing. You've got the Foundation series, the Robot series by Asimov. Can intelligent robots develop consciousness was a question that was put out there. Now we've got the big AI question on our hands, right? Artificial intelligence. 2001 has touched on this topic. The topic of man and technology, man and machine, the relationship between humans and their technology. And so many science fiction stories have dealt with, humans or humanoids becoming extinct, other life forms becoming extinct because the machines they created have taken over. And our biggest fear still, particularly in non-Asian countries, Japan, China, they've really embraced robotics and robotics. They even have therapy pets that are androids. The guy that created the female newscaster, I think it was China or Japan, it was Android Science in 2006. And he was a fan of data, he was of Star Trek, and he wanted to create a real-life data, so he did. I mean, if you touch her inappropriately, she's programmed to respond to you accordingly. All kinds of nuances, and so the Asian cultures are ahead of us in terms of being embracing of technology that's machine or android or robotic. But still, the issue remains that, we look at works like Asimov's, or anybody that talks about the issue of the relationship between humans and technology. This is still a big issue for us. People still fear being, replaced by machines in some way. I remember when the automatic checkout registers came at the supermarkets, the Walmarts. What happens to your cashier job? Do you still need a cashier anymore that's a human? Not so much anymore, probably. And it's become a bigger trend, too, to get those checkout stands because people think they're faster and more efficient. Are they? Who knows? You just want to get your stuff and get out. Sometimes those are the longer lines. You don't get to talk to anybody. But then there are days you don't want to talk to anybody, so who knows? But it's a big concern. And the more and more we develop robotic technology, artificial intelligence technology, you know, we've got teledoctors now. Do you want a teledoctor? Do you want to get to the point where you have a holographic doctor? You know, so a lot of what's going on is still a big concern, a big fear in terms of the human population overall. I think that underlying fear that technology is going to override us someday. Because the best illustration really still is 2001. That is the most spectacular thing I've ever seen. It's my favorite all-time movie. It's like, sorry, have a nice day, I now have taken over. And it all starts with the one chimpanzee picking up the bone and learning how to use it as some sort of tool, even some sort of weapon. And how humans for years have thought they could control their technologies, and then lo and behold, the technology turns on you. Even a Twilight Zone one with Robbie the Robot, he wasn't called Robbie in the episode, but it was Whipple's department store. And it was totally taken over, and it's like, have a nice day, humans. So we do still have a real need to explore our relationship with the technologies that we create, and how we're going to establish the rules and regulations and the technologies, and how far we'll let that go. And we have talked about Fahrenheit 451 a little bit earlier on, and it really shocks me that book is still so relevant today, the idea that we can't have access to knowledge. Really? Why not? What's going to happen if I access knowledge? We all know. That'll be how we overwhelm. If we don't get success with our weapon shops that somebody's going to develop, we'll have to go have an underground library so we can have knowledgeable citizens again. And one way or another, science fiction will lead us to hopefully taking over and making the changes we need to make. Forbidden Planet, you know, the lingering dangers of the evolution of a species towards a technological perfection. If you have not seen this movie, I highly encourage going to see this movie. You know, what happens when you tinker with that alien technology? Okay, fantastic film. X-Men, issues of race, issues of gender, individuality, diversity driving cultural evolution is a theme. Okay, and there are people that want to get rid of diversity, suppress cultural evolution. We all know people in power want to maintain that power, and they'll do anything in the world to hang on to that power, to hang on to their social status. Do they want change? Oh, hell no. That's why we have to burn all the books and totally disassemble the educational system and access to education and proper nutrition and proper health. It's all in science fiction. You know the stories. And that's why it's so important to talk about them. And X-Men, I think, does a really good job of looking at the issue of race, looking at the issue of gender, but beyond that, looking at the need for diversity, the need for social diversity in order to maintain the human species. Even if we took this one room here, we take culture unto ourselves in this room. For cultural diversity, differences in ideas and thoughts, and changes to occur, we're going to become a stagnant society. We become extinct, right? Stagnation, we can't have social stagnation, right? And I'm speaking to that as well, particularly through the comics. We have the issues of something I'll raise in the X-Men talk that I don't want to get too heavily involved with. Everybody sees X-Men as, oh, we must have to and merge everybody into society. And that's great, which is not striving for equality and diversity, but looking at and special interests by particular groups. So that's something I raised in the X-Men talk. Okay. Here we also see genetic manipulation, X-Men. Could we create our own X-Men? They create the children after they've gotten rid of the other mutants, right? Captain America created soldier, and we use them for always work out. And should we be tampering with genetic engineering of humans? We can make designer babies. What color eyes you want? How tall you want your kid to be? What are you looking for in an IQ in this stuff? It's all out. Be beast all day, or at my, I would like Luthor. That would be a great mutation to be able to just jump into every once in a while. I've given that great thought. I wouldn't want some special power. I would just like to be able to have, that'd be a cool mutation for me, and have them change my DNA so that I would have this. But people are altering the to fix diseases in the womb prior to birth, which is a great technology to have, yes? But we also can, and people are doing it. Now, should we be doing it? The food, gosh, you can go out and have Fluffy cloned if you want. You lose your best pet, they fixed that for you. That's like $15,000. Will it still be your pet? Probably not. There's been all kinds of stuff that's come up with that too. But that still speaks to us very much today. Not only, and I'm not talking so much the newer, the original novel, although to me the Mark Wahlberg film was novel. I don't know how many of you are up to speed on Planet of the Apes. Or even the old TV series. We still have that going on today to a good extent. A lot of it was also anti. We still have issues with that today. Blade Runner. Okay. We could ask that question of data. Star Trek explored that in Next Generation's I'm getting it mixed up with the book. Measure of a Man with data. But yeah, Blade Runner was fantastic. Everybody's seen Blade Runner, right? Or Contact, Total Recall, programming the human mind. And now you got all your healthcare splattered across all these little portals. They tell you you sign up for the little portals, and they put all your healthcare in all these little portals. Who's accessing your portals? We got real ID on our driver's licenses, and is that a good thing? Where's all this headed? Are we going to have chips in us next? There are chips available that they tell you it's a good thing. They can put all your medical information on a little input that they put into you that can be scanned. Well, that's fantastic. What else is in that? And what else can we do? How much we talk, science fiction also tells us to examine closely real, valid, ethical dilemmas and the impact they're having on us as biological beings, on our environment, and on our society, on the culture as a whole. Tron, Human as a Computer Program, 2001, Quark, Tools, and Humans. From the time I pick up that bone as a chimpanzee, I learned to do all kinds of neat stuff. I also learned how to kill with it. That's a great tool. And I think that alone, just that one scene, makes me at least stop and think. We walk a very fine line, and of course we have overall ethics, cultural ethics, but each person has their own individual ethical or moral compass, and that's why we get into the discussions we do about, well, we should do this and we should do this, well, we shouldn't do that. Well, that's why people argue, because they've got their own internal compass about them. But you look at something like 2001, and you say, well, okay, that's a tool. That's fantastic. I can use it for things. Yeah, you can also learn to destroy with it, too. And it happens. And that's a big part of human nature. The whole idea of playing God, or will our technology outrun us someday because of what we create? Great, great ethical dilemmas to look at. Genetic manipulation and the whole 9 yards. Gattaca, genetic perfection. Oh, where have we heard that before? Oh, the Hitler, right? Genetic perfection. And there it is sitting in Gattaca. We've got shows like Babylon 5, Star Trek, Star Wars, Twilight Zone, that all use aliens to mirror our society as it is now. Because Star Trek in particular, I'll showcase for a half a second, and even they've gone beyond all of this. So all the aliens they encounter have art issues of the day. And we get to see those mirrored and reflected back at us that way. Babylon 5 I thought was so well done. People remember Babylon 5, I hope. I really liked the internal conflict and how that was set up. Star Wars, maybe not so much in terms of, exploring real humanity there, but people are attracted to it. There are some valid things we could take from it in terms of looking at, technology and individuality. Twilight Zone still holds water. What episode you want to go put on? We go put it on. We could, and it would still hold water today, wouldn't it? Humans haven't changed all that much. That's terrifying. We look around, well, I got these fancy phones. I can project these fancy things on this. Look at this. Of course we've... Evolutionary psychology. Our technology has grown exponentially, but the human brain is still the same brain we've had for 2.5 million years since Homo erectus came about. And our technologies and our culture has grown leaps and bounds beyond our capacity psychologically to adapt fast enough to it. And a guy named Pierce, John K. Pierce, Exiles from Eden. It was written back, 70s, 80s. I have the book at home. It's considered a seminal work in evolutionary psychology, and that's exactly what he talks about, deviant behaviors in our society because of how far advanced we've let our culture get, with respect to how long it takes us as biological beings to adapt to it and change with it. So evolutionary psychology is a wonderful field to take a look at. That was just a fun quote from Gattaca. But I think the high point for me, really, I know Hollywood likes blockbusters with a lot of action because that's what they think brings people to the movie and they sell tickets and they probably like. Non-action science fiction. Ethan Hawke. It's like, wow, this was a real good story. And I think we've all seen Gattaca, yes? The Arrival, this was impeccable. Everybody has seen this. Even a linguistic level. What field of anthropology do we want to talk about with respect to this movie? I'm not talking so much about the Charlie Sheen one, but I'm talking about this one. I did throw it up there because every time I say The Arrival, Charlie Sheen, I've seen that. It's like, okay, let's be over that now. I'm sure the aliens are taking our form and living among us, and that's lovely. Okay, now let's talk about the real movie, The Arrival. The impact of this movie was phenomenal. It was so well done. The symbolism, the linguistic aspect, all the work that was done on screen to show you what was unfolding. Working, mutual alien human assistance. This is a blow-away movie. If you have not seen this movie, please, by all means, see it. And Rise of the Robots, just to try to bring us into a little more current literature. 2015, technology and the threat of a jobless future. Science fiction writers who are writing non-science fiction discussing our issues about the human relationship with technology and possible outcomes in our future with our technology. And how bad is it to think we may attain a post-scarcity society someday and we don't actually have to work for money and we have all our needs met. And my life becomes I can lay on the beach and read books and work on self-improvement all day. Finally get around to all those things I say I'm going to learn and do. We all have a list like that, right? I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn that language, I'm going to play that instrument. We all have these lists of things we want to learn, right? How many of us get to them because we're busy working to make money? Well, let the robots take over, do it for you, right? Then we don't have to worry about it. We become this post-scarcity society in the future, we cure everything, we fix everything, and I just have a good life self-improving. Sound good? This is a great book, though. It does talk about the ins and outs and the ethics involved in moving towards a more technological, more robotic, AI-type society. And the real threats that could exist in the job market and how people react to that. Okay? And then finally, looking at the last piece of this, hopefully we've made the point pretty clear that science fiction does indeed act as contemporary mythology, as a progressive narrative, progressive myth, for us to continue to go back to and read about ourselves and say, oh my goodness, you see your world reflected in these stories. And you say, my gosh, this is what's going on the globe today. This is what's going on in our culture today. Wow, that's right. If we keep doing ABC, this might be where we go. How good is that? I don't know. Let me think about that. You might be the one person And really, cultural change, again, is driven by individual diversity. Every individual, even though we're all part of the same culture, we've all been taught our culture as we've grown up, you gotta make it change in order to keep it going. So we've got to uproot the human species in order to perpetuate its survival. Yeah? I can't be that crazy. I mean, I know I'm crazy. I can't be that crazy. So sometimes I have to say, when I watch the news or read the newspaper or scroll through news, sometimes I become very frustrated. I look back and some science fiction story will hit me. And I'll be like, oh crap, I'm more frustrated. But I think for me, one of the things I really like to do when I teach class algebra, as much as I despise teaching algebra, I get to bring to those classes, even to the algebra class, word problems about Batman, Star Trek. I try to have some fun with that. But in those other classes, I bring in science fiction. I bring in comics. And who knows, who knows what one person may go out there and really make some difference in the world and make the world change. It really comes down to the individual pre-existing variability, not only biologically in your gene pool, of course, but in how we each think individually. And what we put really are more globally aware than most people, really more community-oriented, I found, than most people. So I think the messages are getting out there in some way, and people are making small differences, including everything from making a big career decision because they were inspired by something, to the smallest thing where maybe they volunteer their community or some such thing, encountered to do something positive in the world. And to me, that speaks volumes narratives of science fiction, no matter if you've read the classic.